Hello and welcome back to the Way to Native Chronicles. What we're going to talk about today is a bit of a downer because as we look around at the time of this recording, there's conflict going on in Ukraine, and there's fears that the conflict could spread and have severe consequences worldwide. How difficult would it be to survive? Is it even a feasible alternative? So we're going to look into that next. So this is going to be a bit of a rambling video because this is not scripted, but I just going to sort of think about the various problems that you might be faced with if let's say everything went kaput in society. And even in a situation where you have a cabin that you go to, how difficult would it be to survive? One of the things that first comes to mind for me is just getting out there. So let's say if we had no electricity left, you're probably going to have a hard time even fueling up your vehicle to get out there if there's even fuel available. So you might be wanting to have a lot of jerry cans kicking around and always have them filled up as just as a safe option just in case, because gas is very important for survival. Gas or diesel, whatever it is you're using. You have to have enough fuel to at least get to this place that you have as an alternative to a place to live. Not just for your vehicle, but you also need gas for a chainsaw perhaps, and for an all-terrain vehicles. Because when you think about it, if you really had to skedaddle out of town, how quickly could you do it, and would it even be possible? For instance, one of the things that might go down would be snowplows and graders. If you're living in Canada, maybe not so much a problem in the States, but in Canada you can get three feet of snow, especially up in these northern parts. And if there's no graders opening up the roads, you're not even going to get to this place that you have, perhaps, unless you have a skidoo. And the skidoo is also going to need gas, and they use lots of it. So it's a really challenging situation to think about. I could see having a truck full of gas, loading up an ATV and a skidoo on it, and having a bunch of jerry cans of extra gas, and getting out of town real quick that way. But that's a real challenging aspect of it. In terms of priorities, even if you had a cabin, you're still going to need to heat that cabin if you're going to stay there in the winter. And that's a challenging thing in itself. The amount of wood that you need to keep a structure or a tent heated through the winter is enormous. And I really don't know how people used to do it. My wife is First Nations, and her people lived in the northern parts of Alberta year-round before a white man came, and how they did it, I'm just often impressed how they survived. Just keeping warm is a huge task to do. The amount of wood you need. So, but at least looking at our situation in the modern day, a chainsaw is really good to have. You gotta be able to buck up a lot of wood and chop it up and build up a big stockpile for when winter comes. Or if you're heading out, if a crisis happens in the middle of winter, you got to start from scratch right away. So huge challenge there, keeping warm. If you're going to survive, you got to stay warm. Another aspect of it is food, of course. Food and water. You're not going to, even if you're warm, you're not going to survive very long if you don't have food and water. So you might have to head out with just a few things you've got kicking around. And the thing I think of, especially in northern Alberta, is we've got moose at least. But things really went south, then everybody would be out hunting moose, and their populations would dwindle very rapidly, I think. Uh, it would decimate the moose population, basically. But the places where they might still be around would be in remote locations where people can't easily go, or are basically impossible for them to go. So you could still have good reservoirs of moose lasting for a long time if you're way the heck out. So that's again one of the advantages uh, of that trappers have very often is we have a cabin that's way out in the bush, and we have paths, trapping trails to get there at any time of year. So very important to have that food supply, and you can live off moose meat, off just meat in general. You can trap as well, and if you have a shotgun, you can get grouse, things like that. But moose, I think, are a really big thing. I also often have to kind of smile because with dealing with my wife's culture, that among the native women, it's kind of, they like to joke a lot, and it's like, what good is that guy? He can't even get a moose. Uh, this is how they sort of size people up, and I'm quite sure that extends back to the old times. If you wanted to get married, and a woman from another family is considering you as a possible husband, you better be a good hunter. So, hunting is going to come into play, and not everybody knows how to hunt. And so, at least you got to have a rifle. Never mind all this stuff you see on the internet about self-defense with handguns and boom, 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 boom. If you're gonna be way the heck out, away from people, which is the whole idea, that semi-automatic 9mm handgun is not going to help you much. What you want is a good hunting rifle. We've probably all heard that saying, "A country boy will survive," and there's a lot to that, because if you were in a situation where society basically broke down, and you're away from people, and you're relying on equipment, vehicles, whether it's car, truck, or an all-terrain vehicle or skidoo, things do break down, and it's amazing what a person with a good head for mechanics can accomplish and keep going. So it's the people that know how to fix things, who are mechanically inclined and understand how things work, they will have a real advantage when it comes to situations like that. Although having a trapping cabin or some sort of cabin out in the bush is not really in the cards for most people, it's something that would be a huge asset. Otherwise, you're going to have to resort to something like a tent if you're going to live out in the bush, and it can be done, but that's quite a bit tougher. The advantage of having a building is that you can pre-stock that. There's a huge amount of equipment that you need actually for long-term survival, that things you wouldn't even think of, but on the spur of the moment. But if you have a cabin, what you tend to do is you tend to bring stuff there once and leave it. There's a lot of little implements you need, like shovels and whatever. You got your wood stove, all kinds of tools that you need to get by, and that's something that you don't necessarily have time to get ready on the spur of the moment. So having a structure already built is something that you might want to strive for. If you did want to go that route in Canada, you basically have to be a trapper. That's the only way I can think of to have the permission to build on Crown land. Now, for you guys in the States, that's Crown land is like public land. It's if you're going on private land, well, then you're probably not very far from people, so that's not really solving the problem. You want to get away from people on land that isn't owned by anyone. So in Canada, you can build a cabin on Crown land legally, and it's protected legally if you're a trapper. But there's quite a few hoops to jump through to get a trap line where you are allowed to build a cabin. It's something that you might want to think about, though. So now that we've discussed all these things, you've probably been thinking to yourself, I can do this, but I can't do that. So you're sort of checking off the boxes like, can you hunt? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Do you have an all-terrain vehicle? Maybe you do. So you check that box. And thinking about a shelter to go to, maybe you know somebody's a trapper, but you don't have that yourself. So there's a box that's unchecked. So what I'm encouraging you to think about as we wrap this up is think about who your tribe is. People get further when they work together, and it has to be people that you trust and can depend on. So maybe start reaching out to somebody who's preferably within your family, who's really good with mechanics, let's say. And let's see, I want to have that guy along with me. So this is not necessarily going to be a matter of who's got the nicest personality and things like that. You need people who are really useful. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it made you think a little bit. If you did, then remember to click like on the video, and if you haven't subscribed to this channel, then please subscribe to it and get the bell notifications checked as well, so you can see whenever new content is on the way. I know this is kind of a sober subject to be dealing with, and if you don't mind me sharing my thoughts on it, I am a Christian, and the way I look at these world catastrophes is that it's God's wake-up call to us. So nothing really happens by chance, and when bad things do happen, and tragedies and disasters around the world, believe that that is God's way of getting our attentions and to draw us closer to Him, because very often in our lives we're just flooded with all kinds of distractions and concerns, and sometimes being just plain too comfortable, and it takes a tragedy or disaster to really bring things back in focus for the big picture. I guess I'll just leave it at that. I want to thank you for supporting this channel, and until next time, God bless.
이 때 또 내가开火子，一天大吃就